Welcome to this Network Instruments presentation. My name is Charles Thompson. Today we're going to be taking you through a few of the recent enhancements which have been made to the Observer platform, specifically those that are targeted at helping organizations to troubleshoot and manage their unified communication environments. Now, the Observer platform is comprised of a number of different components. It begins with the Observer Reporting Server along the top of our monitoring model here. Observer Reporting Server has the ability to aggregate multiple perspectives together into a single logical depiction of the environment for an organization, harvesting information from packet-based data sources, flow-based metrics, as well as resource monitoring perspectives. Along the bottom, GigaStor acts as our retrospective network analysis component, with Observer providing troubleshooting analysis functions and Observer Infrastructure providing device-level details. Now, when we're talking about unified communications, obviously one of the most critical applications within that domain is the voice over IP component. Voice over IP actually leverages a fairly complex underlying application communication scheme. We begin by having the two different clients that will be involved in the communication, Client 1 and Client 2, as well as a centrally located server, which will act as the call manager in this communication. Each of the clients has call setup information being exchanged with the server, as well as communicating directly to one another for call control information, as well as the exchange of the actual audio content. So when we look at even this simplistic example of a voice over IP communication, we can see that there's actually a fairly complex multi-tier application at work here. Now, when we try and apply retrospective network analysis to this type of an environment, it becomes very challenging for many organizations. First, an organization has to identify the time frame that's of interest inside of their retrospective network analysis platform. Now, typically, this time period is going to represent a period of time in which users were complaining of poor call quality. The next step is to identify the relevant elements of interest. Maybe it's a phone number, maybe it's an extension, maybe it's a caller ID value, something that can be used to uniquely identify the call that's going to be of interest. The next step then is to extract the data and obtain the packets which contain that pattern. Then begins a very manual process of examining those call setup packets that have been extracted and iteratively building a filter which will allow for the extraction of the entire call and all of its communication. Now, this process oftentimes has multiple phases because as you learn more about the call, you have to append additional information for your extraction filter. This process can be very, very time consuming for many organizations because it involves multiple extractions and the iterative creation of this filter process. And when you're trying to troubleshoot one particular call of interest, having to spend this amount of time simply to extract it from your retrospective network analysis appliance and begin the process of analysis is very, very time consuming for an organization. We've recently added the new GigaStor call extract feature to address this issue. And the new call extract feature allows an organization to simply select the time period of interest and provide that identification method, whether it's going to be a call ID value, a DID, or an extension, and begin the extraction process. Observer will automatically build this iterative filter and extract all relevant information related to the call. Now, that'll include all call setup traffic, the control information, the audio itself, and if there were any further additions to the communication, say for example one of the clients decided to conference in another endpoint, that will also be included in the extraction. So if we take a look at how this is going to appear inside of the interface, inside of the GigaStor control panel, I've selected my time period here along the top in which I know the call is going to be present. I click the Analyze option and I select the VoIP and video calls analysis option. Under the settings, I'll define my pattern that I'm interested in extracting against. In this particular case, it's going to be a call ID pattern. I can choose the directionality if I want to only extract when this pattern is the destination or the source. I click on OK, and then by clicking on OK to the analysis dialog, the extraction process begins and the appropriate information is presented to the end user. So a massive time-saving benefit here by allowing the organization to simply do two quick definitions, the time frame and the data that can be used to identify the communication, and allowing that extraction to automatically begin to occur and the information to be presented into the analytics. Now, another critical component to many organizations' UC service portfolio is their fax over IP component. Now there's many different ways to communicate fax traffic inside of the environment. Fax over IP and specifically T38 is one of the most prevalent methods of communicating fax traffic within a unified communications environment. Now if we again come into the observer platform and bring up a trace that contains some fax over IP traffic, you can see here that this particular communication has got G711 at its codec and T38 fax traffic. We can see here the details of this T38 transaction. We're looking at how many pages were being transmitted, the error recovery type that was in use, total packets, total bytes, volume of information being exchanged for this T38 transaction, any errors which occurred, how much data is being used to transmit the image itself, and how much non-image data is being transacted, how many control packets, training packets for the endpoints, keep alives. So the idea here is that we're not focusing solely on the transport of the T38 traffic, but we're actually giving visibility into that transported content to help organizations to better understand how effectively that T38 is being transacted in the environment, what type of error recovery is occurring, what types of inefficiencies may be occurring. So a lot of great information that can be provided on that fax over IP traffic. Now those are just a few of the recent enhancements which have been made to the Network Instruments Observer platform to help organizations to troubleshoot and manage their unified communications environments. You can certainly check us out at networkinstruments.com for more information about unified communications or any of the Network Instruments performance management solutions.